When Sarah Mitchell walked into the prestigious Harborview Yacht Club in her worn sailing clothes, they laughed her out the door, never suspecting she'd return with a fleet of world-class vessels and her billionaire husband's support. What happens when the elite sailing world discovers the simple woman they humiliated is actually one of the most accomplished navigators on the eastern seaboard? She wasn't supposed to be there. At least that's what Victor Reynolds thought when Sarah Mitchell walked through the polished doors of Harborview Yacht Club, wearing worn deck shoes and a practical windbreaker. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, face tanned from years at sea rather than salon beds. The receptionist's smile faltered as she approached the gleaming mahogany desk. "Can I help you?" he asked, eyes flicking to the members lounging in tailored blazers behind her. "I'd like to register for the Atlantic Crossing competition," Sarah said, her voice steady and clear. The receptionist blinked twice. "The members' lounge is currently closed for cleaning. The public pier is 2 miles east." "I'm not looking for the public pier," Sarah clarified, remaining patient. "I'm here for the competition registration. I've completed 4 solo crossings and—" "The Atlantic Crossing is our premier event," interrupted a crisp voice. Victor Reynolds approached, crystal tumbler in hand, Club Commodore pin gleaming on his tailored blazer. "It's for experienced sailors only." Sarah straightened her shoulders. "I've been sailing since I was 6. I've navigated." "Perhaps there's a misunderstanding," Victor cut in, eyeing her practical clothing with thinly veiled contempt. "This particular event requires extensive qualifications and, frankly, significant financial commitment. The entry fee alone is $50,000. "I'm aware of the fee," Sarah replied, reaching for her wallet. "I'd like to pay it now." Victor exchanged glances with William Blackwood, the assistant commodore who had appeared at his shoulder. Both men shared a smirk that made Sarah's skin prickle. "Ms. Mitchell." "Sarah Mitchell." "Ms. Mitchell," Victor continued, swirling his drink. "This is an invitation-only event. Our participants are carefully selected, experienced yachtsmen with proven records and the right connections." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice level. "I've sailed the Pacific solo 3 times. I was first mate on the Northern Star when it won." "The competition committee has already finalized the participant list," William interrupted, speaking as if to a child. "Perhaps one of the smaller, local regattas would be more suitable for someone like you." The lobby had grown quiet. Other members pretended not to listen while stealing glances at the confrontation. A woman in tennis whites whispered something behind her hand to her companion, both snickering in Sarah's direction. "Someone should tell her this isn't the fishing dock," a man murmured, just loud enough to be heard. Sarah stood perfectly still, dignity intact despite the growing humiliation. "I see," she said quietly. "Thank you for your time." As she turned toward the exit, Victor's voice carried across the marble floor. "Some people simply don't understand tradition. The Atlantic isn't for weekend hobbyists." The doors closed behind her, but not before she heard the ripple of laughter. Outside, Sarah paused on the steps, taking a deep breath of salt air. A group of men in crisp white uniforms passed, not bothering to hide their appraising looks. "Lost, miss," one called out. "Staff entrance is around back." Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she walked to her modest car parked between gleaming luxury vehicles. Inside, she pulled out her phone and hesitated only briefly before making the call. "John, it's me. We need to talk." As she drove away, Sarah glanced in her rearview mirror at the club's pristine white facade and manicured grounds. Little did they know who they'd just turned away, or what was coming tomorrow. Waves crashed against rocky shores as Sarah's car wound up the private coastal road leading to the Mitchell estate. Seagulls circled overhead, their cries mingling with the distant sound of boat engines from the harbor below. Unlike Harborview's showy grandeur, the Mitchell property blended with its natural surroundings, elegant but understated, much like Sarah herself. Jonathan Mitchell looked up from his desk when Sarah entered his study. At 48, the shipping magnate commanded respect in maritime circles worldwide, though few would recognize him on sight, exactly as he preferred. "You're back early," he noted, immediately setting aside financial reports. "Something wrong?" Sarah dropped her keys on a side table, the clatter louder than intended. "Harborview Yacht Club wouldn't let me register." "Apparently," I don't fit their idea of a real sailor. Jonathan's expression darkened. What exactly happened? As Sarah recounted the humiliation, Jonathan's jaw tightened visibly. Unlike his wife's composed exterior, anger flashed across his features. Victor Reynolds and William Blackwood, he confirmed, rising from his chair. Those pompous frauds wouldn't know a proper sailor if one crashed into their overpriced toys. Sarah paced to the window, overlooking their private harbor, where her weathered but immaculately maintained sailing yacht rested alongside Jonathan's larger vessels. It wasn't just that they rejected me, she said quietly. It was how they did it, like I was some clueless tourist who wandered in by mistake. And everyone watching, laughing. Jonathan joined her the window. They have no idea who they just turned away, do they? I didn't mention you, Sarah replied. I wanted to enter on my own merits, not as Jonathan Mitchell's wife. Your merits? Jonathan turned, incredulous. Sarah, you've sailed more nautical miles solo than anyone at that club. You navigated through a Category 4 hurricane while they were posing for photos in pressed uniforms. Sarah smiled wryly. Doesn't matter. I'm just a woman in worn deck shoes to them. Below their window, dock workers prepared a sleek racing yacht for tomorrow's weather. Sarah watched them work, her mind elsewhere. The competition starts day after tomorrow, she mused. I really thought I could enter this year. Jonathan studied his wife's profile, the determination in her eyes despite the disappointment. Most people saw only her simple appearance, missing entirely the steel beneath. It was their loss, but this time, the rejection had cut deeper than she would admit. What if you still could? He asked slowly. Sarah turned. They made it very clear. Not through their invitation. Jonathan clarified, ideas forming rapidly. What if we showed them exactly who they rejected? John, Sarah warned, recognizing the dangerous glint in her husband's eye. I don't want revenge. I just wanted to compete. Not revenge, Jonathan corrected. Education. He moved to his desk and pressed the intercom. Miranda, connect me with Captain Lawson immediately. And call the harbor master. I want every vessel in the fleet ready by morning. Sarah raised an eyebrow. The entire fleet? John, what are you planning? Jonathan's smile held the confidence of someone accustomed to reshaping worlds. Something the Harborview Yacht Club will never forget. This isn't necessary, Sarah protested, though without much conviction. It is, Jonathan insisted, moving to hold her shoulders gently. Not just for you. For every qualified sailor they've rejected, because they didn't look right or know the right people. His phone buzzed. Yes. Lawson, I need all 7 vessels prepared for a special operation tomorrow. Full crews, perfect condition. He paused, listening. Yes, all 7. And one more thing. Contact Catherine Williams and Eleanor James. Tell them I'm calling in those favors they owe me. Sarah's eyes widened. Catherine Williams? The round-the-world record holder? John, what exactly are you? A knock interrupted them. Miranda entered with a tablet. You asked for the files on Harborview's board members and sponsors. Perfect timing, Jonathan said, taking the device. Let's see who we're dealing with. Sarah watched her husband scroll through information, his expression shifting from anger to something more calculating. Did you know, he remarked casually, that Oceanic Apparel, Harborview's primary competition sponsor, is actually owned by Mitchell Holdings through 3 shell companies? You can't be serious, Sarah breathed. Dead serious, Jonathan confirmed. They don't even realize who signs their checks. Outside, the sky darkened as evening approached, casting long shadows across the water. Something in Jonathan's expression made Sarah both nervous and curious. John, promise me you won't do anything extreme. He looked up from the tablet, eyes gleaming with purpose. Define extreme. Before Sarah could answer, Jonathan's phone rang again. Yes? Excellent. Tell them all to be here at dawn. Sarah crossed her arms. Tell who to be here at dawn? Just a few friends, Jonathan replied innocently. People who understand what it means to be judged by appearances rather than skill. He turned back to the window, gazing at the fleet of vessels in their private harbor, each worth more than most of Harborview's boats combined. Tomorrow, he promised quietly, Victor Reynolds and his club will learn that the sea doesn't care what you wear or who your family is. It only respects one thing, skill. Sarah felt a flutter of something between apprehension and anticipation. What exactly do you have planned? Let's just say, Jonathan replied, eyes fixed on the horizon. Harborview Yacht Club is about to receive some very unexpected visitors. Birds scattered into the dawn sky as 7 vessels came to life in the Mitchell Private Harbor. Dock workers hustled between boats, checking lines and loading supplies with military precision. This wasn't just preparation. This was a mission. Captain Lawson barked orders as sailors in matching uniforms readied Jonathan's fleet. The centerpiece, a 120-foot mega yacht named Horizon, gleamed like a predator awaiting its moment to strike. Is all this really necessary? Sarah asked, watching the activity from their terrace. She wore the same simple outfit from yesterday, the clothes that had marked her as unworthy in Harborview's eyes. Absolutely, Jonathan replied, passing her a steaming mug of coffee. Sometimes people only understand what they can see. And today, they're going to see plenty. A convoy of vehicles appeared on the private road leading to their estate. One by one, they parked alongside the harbor. Sarah nearly dropped her mug when she recognized the first person to emerge. That's Catherine Williams, she gasped. The legendary sailor stepped out, wearing practical deck shoes and weathered sailing clothes nearly identical to Sarah's. Behind her came Eleanor James, Rebecca Stevens, and 4 other women, each a champion in her own right, each dressed for function rather than fashion. John, Sarah whispered, what have you done? Made a few calls, he replied with a satisfied smile. Turns out you're not the only accomplished sailor who's been turned away by Harborview and their traditions. The women gathered by the docks, greeting each other with the easy familiarity of those who share both profession and frustration. Catherine spotted Sarah on the terrace and waved. You didn't tell me this was a reunion, Sarah said, returning the gesture. It wasn't planned that way, Jonathan admitted. But when I started making calls, the stories poured out. Catherine was denied entry to their regatta cup 3 years ago. Eleanor was told the ladies' auxiliary might be more her speed. Sarah shook her head, and they all dropped everything to come here. Not for me, Jonathan corrected. For you, and for themselves. For every woman who's been judged by her appearance rather than her skill. Captain Lawson approached, tablet in hand. Fleet's ready, sir. Crews are standing by. Excellent. Sarah, she hesitated, torn between distaste for confrontation and the undeniable pull of justice. What exactly happens when we arrive? Jonathan's eyes gleamed with anticipation. First, we make an entrance impossible to ignore. 7 vessels, perfect formation, right into their precious harbor during their pre-competition reception. They'll be furious, Sarah warned. Undoubtedly, Jonathan agreed. Then comes the interesting part. Miranda appeared at their side. Sir, Mr. Mason from Oceanic Apparel is on the line. He says Harborview has been calling him about tomorrow's sponsor meeting. Perfect timing. Jonathan took the phone. James? Jonathan Mitchell. Yes, regarding tomorrow's meeting. There's been a change of plans. Sarah watched her husband's expression shift from businessman to chess master, positioning pieces for a move his opponent couldn't yet see. Tell them you'll still attend, Jonathan continued, but you'll be arriving by boat. My boat, specifically. When he hung up, Sarah raised an eyebrow. Their main sponsor is arriving on your yacht. The sponsor they don't realize I own, Jonathan corrected. The first of many surprises today. Below them, the group of female sailors had boarded the vessels, each taking command positions. These weren't just passengers, they were captains in their own right. As the crews took their positions, Jonathan leaned close to Sarah's ear, ready to show them what a real sailor looks like. Looking at the fleet before her, 7 vessels crewed by some of the world's finest sailors, all women who'd been dismissed or underestimated, Sarah felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about her anymore. Yes, she said finally. I believe I am. The Horizon's engines rumbled to life, followed by 6 others in perfect sequence. Like predators moving into formation, the Mitchell fleet pulled away from the private harbor, setting course for Harborview Yacht Club and the reckoning that awaited. Champagne flutes clinked as Harborview's elite gathered on the observation deck. Victor Reynolds surveyed his domain with satisfaction, nodding to board members and patting the shoulders of the 12 men selected for tomorrow's prestigious Atlantic crossing. Finest field we've had in years, he proclaimed to William Blackwood. Each competitor more qualified than the last. And more connected, William added with a meaningful smile. Johnson's family donated the new East Wing. Harrison's firm handles our legal matters, and Thompson's father was a founding member. Tradition matters. Victor agreed, swirling his whiskey. Standards must be maintained. A young staff member approached hesitantly. Sir, Harbor Patrol is on the line. They're reporting a situation. Victor waved dismissively. Whatever is can wait. We're in the middle of. Sir, the young man persisted. They're saying 7 vessels are approaching in formation, refusing to identify themselves except as the Mitchell fleet. Victor froze, glass halfway to his lips. Mitchell? As in? Jonathan Mitchell, sir. Mitchell Shipping. The name rippled through the gathering. Conversations halted as members turned toward the harbor entrance where, unmistakably, a formation of vessels approached with military precision. Someone call Harbor Patrol, Victor ordered, but his voice lacked conviction as he recognized the lead ship. That's the Horizon. What is Mitchell doing here? A younger member with a tablet quickly searched online. Sir, Mitchell Shipping owns half the commercial ports on the eastern seaboard. Mitchell himself is worth billions, but rarely makes public appearances. I know who Jonathan Mitchell is. Victor snapped, color draining from his face. What I don't understand is why his entire fleet is converging on our marina during a private event. The vessels continued their approach, breaking formation only to align perfectly with the visitors' docks. Crew members in matching uniforms secured the boats with practiced efficiency. From the Horizon's deck, Jonathan Mitchell emerged in simple sailing attire, quality pieces worn with the comfort of someone who used them for their intended purpose. Behind him came Sarah, still in her practical clothes, accompanied by a group of women whose faces gradually registered with the watching crowd. Is that Catherine Williams? Someone whispered. And Eleanor James. She holds the transatlantic record. Victor's grip tightened around his glass as Jonathan led his party up the dock toward the clubhouse. Members parted silently, a mixture of confusion and awe on their faces. Mr. Reynolds, Jonathan called out pleasantly. Beautiful evening for a gathering, wouldn't you say? Victor struggled to regain composure. Mr. Mitchell, this is a private event. Is it? Jonathan replied, glancing around theatrically. That's unfortunate. We've come quite a distance to register for your competition. Registration closed weeks ago. William interjected, stepping forward. As we explained to your associate yesterday. My wife, Jonathan corrected with dangerous politeness. Sarah Mitchell, who has logged more solo nautical miles than everyone at this reception combined. You deemed her unworthy of your competition. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as members connected the plainly dressed woman with the Mitchell name, one of the most powerful in maritime industries. Victor cleared his throat. There appears to have been a misunderstanding. Had we known that she was wealthy? Jonathan interrupted. That she was married to me? Interesting criteria for a sailing competition, wouldn't you say? He gestured to the women behind him. Allow me to introduce Catherine Williams, Eleanor James, Rebecca Stevens, all world-class sailors who have faced similar misunderstandings at establishments like yours. A man in a blue blazer stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, I'm James Mason from Oceanic Apparel. We're tomorrow's primary sponsor. Yes, Mr. Mason, Jonathan smiled. Or should I say, my employee? Oceanic has been a subsidiary of Mitchell Holdings for 5 years now. Victor's face went ashen. What exactly do you want, Mitchell? 2 things. First, a formal apology to my wife and every other qualified sailor your club has dismissed based on appearance or gender. And second, entry into tomorrow's competition, Jonathan said simply. Not for me, for them. He gestured to the women standing behind him. Impossible, William sputtered. The field is set. The rules clearly state. I've read your rule book, Sarah spoke up. Nowhere does it specify gender requirements for entrance, only experience and financial qualifications. We meet both. Victor's face reddened. This is outrageous. You can't simply sail in here and demand. I'm not demanding, Jonathan corrected. I'm offering an opportunity to evolve beyond outdated thinking, or to explain to your sponsors why you refuse participation from some of the most qualified sailors in the world. Locked doors couldn't muffle the raised voices inside Harbor View's boardroom. Outside, Sarah stood at the railing overlooking boats bobbing in the darkening marina. She hadn't wanted this confrontation, this public spectacle, yet something about it felt necessary, like lancing a wound. "You're quiet," Catherine Williams observed, joining her. "Just wondering if forcing change this way actually works," Sarah replied. Catherine smiled wryly. "3 years ago, they told me my application needed further review. I later learned the board never even considered it." She nodded toward the boardroom. "Now they're considering." Inside, Victor Reynolds paced like a caged animal. "This is blackmail, pure and simple." "This is consequence," Jonathan corrected calmly. "You judge a sailor by her clothes rather than her record. The club has standards." "About clothing? Or skill?" Jonathan challenged. "Because if it's skill, my wife outqualifies every competitor you selected." Young James Foster, the newest board member, cleared his throat. "I've looked up Mrs. Mitchell's sailing record. She circumnavigated solo 3 times and survived the Torres Strait hurricane of 2020. William Blackwood scoffed. "Records can be exaggerated, whereas blazers and family connections can't." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. A secretary entered with a tablet. "Sir, 3 sponsors have called asking why Catherine Williams was turned away from registration." Victor blanched. "What? How did they?" "Social media," the secretary explained. "Someone recognized Ms. Williams and posted about today's situation." Murmurs spread through the board. Being seen as excluding champion sailors based on gender was a public relations nightmare, especially when potential revenue was at stake. "What guarantee do we have this won't damage the club's reputation if we agree?" Victor finally asked. "None," Jonathan answered honestly. "But I can guarantee what happens if you refuse." Back at the railing, Sarah noticed a small girl watching her from the deck below. The child clutched a sailing magazine with Catherine Williams on the cover. "Is it true?" the girl called up. "Are you all racing tomorrow?" Sarah smiled gently. "We hope to be. My dad says girls can't handle big ocean races," the child continued, her small face serious. "He says we aren't strong enough." Before Sarah could respond, the boardroom doors opened. Victor emerged, face rigid with forced politeness. "Ladies," he announced, the words slightly strained. "Harborview Yacht Club would be honored to welcome you as participants in tomorrow's Atlantic crossing." Relief and triumph swept through the gathered women, but Sarah stepped forward with quiet authority. "And the apology, Mr. Reynolds?" Victor's jaw tightened momentarily. "The club sincerely regrets any misunderstanding regarding qualifications. We welcome accomplished sailors regardless of appearance." "Not perfect, but a start." Sarah nodded her acceptance, while Jonathan watched with pride. "We look forward to tomorrow's race," Sarah replied simply. As Victor retreated, Catherine leaned towards Sarah. "You realize they're only doing this because they were forced." "Of course," Sarah acknowledged. "But sometimes change begins with forced hands before it reaches hearts and minds." Below them, the little girl still watched, eyes wide with newfound possibility. "Excuse me," Sarah said, moving toward the stairs. She approached the child, kneeling to meet her eyes. "What's your name?" "Emma." "Well, Emma, would you like to come aboard my boat and see what it's like to stand at the helm?" The girl's face lit up, but she hesitated. "My dad is right over there," Sarah completed, nodding toward a man in a club blazer who watched with embarrassment. "Why don't we ask him together?" As they walked toward him, Sarah noticed board members watching from windows. Nothing she could say would change their minds as effectively as what they were witnessing. A new generation seeing possibilities where barriers once stood. This victory wasn't simply about forcing entry into a race. It was about that moment when Emma's father reluctantly nodded, when her small hand slipped into Sarah's, and when the future of sailing took a small but significant step forward. Tomorrow's race would matter in ways no one at Harborview yet understood. Angry skies greeted competitors at dawn. Weather reports warned of worsening conditions, 20-knot winds rising to 30, 4-foot swells building to 7. Half the original entrants had already withdrawn, citing boat maintenance issues that fooled no one. "They're scared," William smirked, watching crews prepare. "These conditions separate real sailors from pretenders." "Indeed they do," Victor agreed, eyes fixed on Sarah's vessel where she confidently directed her small crew. "Though Mitchell's wife seems determined." "Lucky for her, the weather will likely force a postponement." Harborview's race committee huddled anxiously by the committee boat. Dangerous conditions meant liability concerns, yet canceling now, after yesterday's public confrontation, would appear like deliberate exclusion. Victor approached Sarah on the dock. "Mrs. Mitchell, given the deteriorating forecast, we're considering postponement. For safety reasons." Sarah checked her weather radar, then glanced at the sky with the practiced eye of someone who read nature's warnings like text. "The front is fast-moving, challenging, but manageable for experienced crews. Nevertheless." "Interesting," Jonathan interrupted, joining them. "Your competition has run in worse conditions before. Last year's crossing faced 35-knot winds, if I recall correctly." Victor flushed. That was different. The competitors were men. Sarah supplied quietly. Gathered media watched the exchange with interest. Cameras captured Victor's discomfort as he weighed his options. "The race proceeds as scheduled," he announced finally. "But any captain may withdraw without penalty." As he walked away, Catherine joined them. "He's hoping we'll withdraw ourselves. Or fail spectacularly," Sarah added. "Either way, they win the narrative." Jonathan frowned. "Withdraw voluntarily, and you were never serious. Struggle in tough conditions, and women can't handle the challenge." Sarah's expression hardened. "Then we don't struggle. We excel." The starting horn blared across choppy waters. 19 vessels crossed the line, their brightly colored sails straining against gusting winds. Only 7 of the original men remained in the race, alongside Sarah and her fellow female captains. From Harborview's observation deck, members tracked the fleet through binoculars as boats battled growing swells. 3 hours in, the weather worsened sharply. Radio calls reported one male competitor taking on water, another with torn sails limping back to harbor. 2 more withdrawals, a race official reported. "Harrison and Thompson are returning." That leaves 5 men's boats still racing. "And the women?" Victor asked reluctantly. "All 7 still on course, sir." William snorted. Foolhardy stubbornness. As afternoon shadows lengthened, driving rain reduced visibility to near zero. Another male competitor signaled distress, his vessel struggling against powerful crosswinds. Only Sarah and her allied female captains seemed to adapt seamlessly, adjusting tactics to work with the elements rather than fighting against them. "They're actually gaining," James Foster reported, studying tracking data. "Mitchell's wife has taken the lead position." By evening, with the western marker in sight, only 9 vessels remained in contention, 7 helmed by women, 2 by men. Sarah's boat had established a commanding 7-minute lead. "Extraordinary," a sports reporter commented. "She's not just surviving these conditions, she's mastering them." When Sarah's vessel crossed the finish line first, her time besting the previous year's record by 12 minutes, silence fell across Harborview's observation deck. Victor's face remained impassive as Catherine Williams and Eleanor James finished 2nd and 3rd respectively. The awards ceremony proceeded with subdued formality. Victor presented the trophy with mechanical correctness, acknowledging Sarah's victory without truly celebrating it. But as she stood on the podium, still in her weathered sailing clothes, hair windblown and face flushed with exertion, a transformation swept through the gathered crowd. Young Emma pushed forward, holding out a program. "Ms. Mitchell, will you sign this? I want to be just like you someday." Sarah knelt to the child's level. "You could be even better, Emma. The sea doesn't care what we wear or how we look. It only respects skill and courage." Later, as moonlight silvered the harbor, Jonathan found Sarah sitting quietly at the end of the dock, trophy beside her. "Regrets?" he asked, settling next to her. "None about racing. None about winning." She paused. "But I've been thinking about Victor and his board. You proved them wrong today. Completely. I know. But forcing someone to see the truth isn't the same as changing their heart." She gestured toward the clubhouse where, surprisingly, members had gathered around Catherine Williams as she described techniques for handling crosswinds. "Maybe hearts change one conversation at a time," Jonathan suggested. Sarah smiled, watching Emma's father approach hesitantly. "Ms. Mitchell, my daughter won't stop talking about becoming a sailor now. I wondered if, perhaps, you might recommend how she should start." And in that simple question, one man's reluctant reaching across a divide, Sarah recognized the true victory of the day. Not the trophy beside her, but the slow, steady process of changing minds. Not through force, but through excellence that could no longer be denied.